And our following speaker, Professor Shunling Chen, is the Associate Research Professor at Institutum Jurisprudentiae at Academia Sinica. She also co-directs the Information Law Center at IIAS. Ladies and gentlemen, now please welcome Professor Chen to present the topic on Imaginaries of Smart Cities and some reality checks from Taiwan. Please welcome.
Hi, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you. Professor
And do
Chen,
you
you may
see my
now,
slide?
yes, you may share your screen right now.
I am sharing it. I'm wondering if you're seeing it right now.
Yes, we're seeing it beautifully.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much for inviting me to this seminar, and it's a great honor to be here to talk to distinguished scholars on this topic. So I saw the topic on the seminar is about like smart city governance. So I actually initially drafted my slides focusing on smart city in Taiwan, and I give a few examples. But I noticed that maybe like there are some different focuses here, so I also um, redrafted it. But in any case, I have my talk in two parts. The first part, I will talk about smart city initiatives around the island of Taiwan. It's probably not so relevant to Frank's discussion on surveillance and law enforcement, but just to give you an idea of what kind of smart city initiatives are there in Taiwan. And second part, I will talk about public health emergencies, especially COVID-19, and that would be more directly responding to Frank's talk. So here, and I have to apologize a little bit about the noise. That I am in an apartment that doesn't have very great sound insulation, so you may probably hear really loud vehicles passing by. But sometimes maybe you'll find yourself hearing the sound, the nice sound of cable car. Yes, I'm in San Francisco. All right, so I'm moving on to my first slide. So smart city has been talked about. It's a concept that's been talked about in a lot in the last decade. When we think of smart city, it often associated with very nice things like technological invention, like economic development, safer environment, better security, and we transform or update our infrastructure with digital technologies, including like data-driven decisions. And it can bring us more efficiency. It can be more responsive. It is bringing more openness in the governance, and it leads to public participation and better governance. Here I have just proposing two books. These are not, these are very approachable books, not very difficult to read. They are offering opposing views on smart cities. On the left is very much a strong advocate for a smart city, and it reflects all those imaginaries I listed out on the first slide. And on the right are more like the critique of smart city. Both books are, as I said, very approachable. And since they are writing from opposing views, it's actually a very interesting read if you read them side by side. And although these are more talk, they talk more about they talk smart cities in the North American context, but actually the kind of imaginings or the kind of problems Valverde and Flynn identify are actually quite similar to things that we're seeing in Taiwan. So I'm summarizing some of their critiques and so these are the critiques of smart city, including smart city is a fuzzy PR term. It doesn't really say much. It's just like population. It sounds nice to put smart as a adjective in front of something. But smart city does not describe the whole municipality. It is mostly just some choices made by local governments in respect of the provision and regulation of services and programs, and usually involves digitization and computing in the fabric of urban spaces. They are nothing really called smart cities or dumb city in a sense. It's just smart cities are just cities that use more digital technologies than others. And it often involves the business innovation and a very strong competition mindset. Although cities are actually in the place that they can talk more about collaboration instead of competition. And there's a lot of privacy issues, and so there involves the smart city projects often involve a lot of data collection and sharing, and there's also distributive justice issues like what kind of resources are being used where. And because smart city projects are very much like new infrastructure projects. And Baverde and Flynn, they mentioned that in these public-private partnerships in smart city or the new infrastructure projects, oftentimes you see only a very small group of um, companies involved, and these are often big, large companies and sometimes multinational companies. Okay, so these are the critiques and imaginaries of smart cities in Taiwan and in elsewhere. Here I give you some more concrete examples from Taiwan. So you see in 2015, this is a news article I found. It is about it's a meeting that happened in Executive Yuan and chaired by the then Premier Mao Zedong. And the meeting is about the blueprint and framework for developing smart cities in Taiwan. And it actually says in other countries, smart cities often talk about governance. But for us in Taiwan, we promote smart cities, which are focusing on industry. It's about, we want to hope, we hope that in the future, we will export smart city systems or services to create more opportunities for Taiwanese industry. So it's kind of like, okay, good governance is not okay. They tend to talk about it, but for us, our focus is more like industry oriented approach. Okay, you may think that this is only 2015 and it's only the premiere back then, but if you look at the smart city committee, there are smart city committees in different cities, and sometimes they call steering committee. If you look at them, you see among the external members or internal members will be city officials, external members, a lot of them are from the industry, and especially in industry in information and computing. I'm just giving you three examples from Taipei and Kaohsiung and Taoyuan, and you can see some in two of the three cities, all of the industry representatives are coming from information and computing or telecommunication. And among these three committees, there's one company, which is IBM, that has seats in all three companies, and there are three companies that have seats in two of the three committees, and these all four of these companies are in information computing and telecommunication. All right, so these are the industrial oriented parts. What are the kind of smart city projects are actually being promoted or talked about? So here, I'll give you one example. This is the smart bus stuff. How smart it is. Okay, maybe you will have a different opinion, but this is one of the things that are actually promoted in more than just one city. You can see them in Kaohsiung, which is what this site coming from Kaohsiung city government. But these kind of bus stops are also in Taipei, in Taichung, in different cities. So this basically is trying to solve the problem that buses passing by a stop and doesn't want to stop for passengers who want to get on. So they put this new lights on, and if you press a button in on the bus stop, the lights will turn on and the bus should stop. So instead of you waiting very hard for the bus driver to stop for you, you push the button, saves you the efforts of waving your hand, and hopefully the bus driver sees you better. Right? So this doesn't have to be exactly a very smart device, but it's kind of like called a smart bus stop. The problem for a lot of passengers is in many places the bus stops serves more than one line, so there are several lines. So it's not clear which bus this light is for, and also in many cases the bus routes share overlapping routes, so several buses can um, the one passenger can choose several buses from the bus stop. So even if some cities actually offer the option of letting you put in the bus number, maybe you want more than one bus to stop because all these buses can take you to where you want to go. So okay, it is trying to solve some problem, but maybe it is not really solving a problem because maybe the real issue is why buses don't slow down when they are coming into a stop, right? Or maybe it's a route planning of the bus stop, or it's the wrong incentive program in the bus company that makes the drivers wanting to speed and pass by stops without stopping. But anyway, this is one of the more popular smart city initiatives that you are seeing around the island. And then we have this example from Taipei. So Taipei city government has says that they have 284 projects, and actually this is one of those I would call a vanity smart city projects because it's well it's kind of matchmaking for married employees. Some city governments do in as part of their welfare awareness program, and they do it every year. And so this is kind of like they just sprinkle some magical dust of information technology onto what they already do and call it a smart city initiative. And you see this blue button here. It says 智慧政府, which is like smart city. So this is kind of like the labeling. Taipei City has several different kind of smart city projects. There are smart government and smart traffic, smart education, smart security, or whatever. And so this is actually categorized as smart government, so or smart governance, which doesn't really make sense to me. So when I see they put up this project as one of their initiatives, I was like, this is calling to be put and discussed in an occasion like this, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to show you that this is one of the smart city projects that they have in Taipei. Okay, the third case is a hotline voice data analysis. So it's 1999 is a hotline that people can call in and complain or ask the city government to solve some issues for them. And they in the past they have also done this hotline voice data analysis, but it in the past it's mostly just to transcribe them and help the people answering call to more efficiently process the call. But this particular case that happened recently, actually is still ongoing. It's more controversial because it claims to analyze the emotions of the caller. So it raises some kind of privacy concerns. People were wondering, okay, people know that their voices are being recorded and monitored for quality purposes, but do they know that their voice will be it would be recorded and analyzed for this kind of studies? So there's some kind of privacy concerns and discussions. And this probably also raised some privacy concerns because it is an ongoing project that kind of overlapped with the time when Taipei opened or inaugurated its big data center, or they call the Taipei Urban Intelligence Center, which involves again a lot of data collection of this city citizens, and how and like how are these data collected? Do people know what their data is collected for and how they're going to be used? That became a hot issue. But you see, this is the response from the Taipei City Mayor about this privacy concerns. They just say, well, we have this Taipei Urban Intelligence Center because the technologies are always ahead of law. And the biggest problem for Taiwan's politics is not about technology or what the administrators were doing, but about people not trusting the government. Whatever the government does, you think it's a bad thing. So we have to build a trustworthy government and like move forward bravely. His kind of like his quick response for this privacy concerns. There was a data governance committee in Taipei, but this study actually didn't go through the data governance committee itself. So here I will this is I will turn to the second part of my presentation, which is about the public health emergencies and the COVID-19 measures and enforcement. Um, so maybe it's useful to look at the pandemic trajectory in Taiwan because it might be different, quite different from other places. So in January 2020, from January 2020 to April 2022, Taiwan is stayed in the policy of zero tolerance for a long time. It started border control very fast and it's strict border control, and we also have strict quarantine mandate and also mask mandate, and we have quite exhaustive contact tracing that are actually quite privacy intrusive. In From the beginning of the pandemic, January 2020 to May 2021, the scope is rather limited to high risk groups. This would include people who recently come into Taiwan, or the people who work in certain professions that are considered as more high risk, or people who were the few people during that period that were confirmed COVID in their contacts. After May 2021 and April 2022, the kind of contact tracing scope expanded with with the tool that I will be talking about later. But adding this tool, the kind of contact tracing kind of potentially covers the whole population, and the whole population is constantly asked to give the data of their location and with the time step. Um, and during this time, the government is very keen on trying to find every potential cases. It's kind of like finding every needle in a haystack. So it's very exhaustive. We do have exposure notification that are less privacy intrusive, but it has not been the main contact tracing tool. Still not. Um, we had no lockdown during the time, even we had the zero tolerance approach. After April 2022, we gradually moved into the COVID. Um, Although there's still border control and quarantine, but it's more relaxed. However, it still involves sharing a lot of linking multiple private and public databases. Quarantine and mask mandates are relaxed, and there's also a bit less. The contact tracing is uh, not as exhaustive as before, but more based on self-report. Exposure notification seems to be a replacement for what people had, the constant reporting system you have to do, which I'll talk later. But the exposure notification app is still not widely adopted or used. Okay, so Frank has mentioned the Korean model. So different from Korean model, we actually didn't have a big cluster until last year in May, or people would actually say until 2022. Like in terms of scale, what we had last May was actually quite small compared to other countries. So we have a lot of tech measures trying to do various things, including quarantine enforcement, border control, and contact tracing. And a lot of these measures were not retired. The measures were just kept adding up. And then we have a very strong focus on cell phone data, including cell tower data and cell phone registration data. Um, so I'm going to talk about the SMS-based guest list. 台湾有一种简讯型人质 So basically, this is a measure to facilitate contact tracing. It was rolled out in May 19, 2021, and it was terminated on April 27, 2022. And the government has encouraged business operators to have guest lists from May 2020, but it was not really a mandate. And there were a lot of people doing paper guest lists, but some people are concerned that these paper guest lists are not going to be kept very well and may be causing some privacy concerns. So there's a tech solution in May 19, 2021, when there was a case uptick. In Taiwan entered the level 3 alert. And this is supposed to be a tech solution to replace the paper guest list to provide people with better privacy. Um, although the guest list was initially not mandated, but it became mandated for certain locations and gradually expand the the, the scope of the mandate expanded to many places, and the data collected including your real identity, which is your cell phone registration, because you send the message out, and that message contains a code for the location you visit and a timestamp. The records is stored with the telecom providers and it's for 28 days. But as for who is the data controller, it's really confusing because nobody really wants to be the data controller. The business operators, they were asked to do this. The Ministry of Health Care and Welfare doesn't really want to be the data controller. Neither does although they signed the contract with the telecom to ask the telecom although the government asked the uh, National Communication Committee to sign the contract with telecom to provide this service, but national NCC doesn't want to be the data controller because they say we're just facilitating the Ministry of Health and Welfare. Anyway, it's a very complicated legal issue, and I don't think it's being discussed very thoroughly. Um, from during the whole time, almost 1 year, there were almost 4.8 billion text sent, and the total request was about 43 million. And the total request, actually, you can see from the slide, between April 1st and 27, it has 18.5 million. So a lot of requests happened in this last year time. And the record number of daily requests was as high as almost 3.8 million. And that's happened on April 19. And on April 18 and April 20, there was also exceeded 1 million and 2 million. And because there's so many data requests and the increase of case numbers kind of overwhelmed the public health officials already, and they just simply couldn't process this data request, and they just have to abandon this exhaustive contact tracing approach. So the system was scheduled to terminate on June 30th, but it was actually had this early termination. So what does it actually do? Like, is it effective? It's a question that worth asking. So between May 19, when it was rolled out, and June 28, when we had the very first stat, there were 619 million texts sent, but only 300 data requests, and these were manually processed. And during that time, the case number has dropped from the peak of 700 plus per day to 2 digit per day, and steadily decrease after late June. So maybe we didn't really quite need to have this guest list, SMS guest list, and we can save people from providing all this personal data, because it doesn't seem that it was really that used, and the COVID was also stamped out, right? But the question wasn't really asked. It was mentioned, but not asked seriously. So in August 2021, when we lower the alert level from level 3 to level 2, what the government does is they say, okay, the previous system, manual process system, was difficult to use. So we're just providing you, meaning the public health personnel, a new platform, tech solution. This new platform will provide public health personnel with easier access to the data you want to request. So it's kind of like, okay, even in the first year, we don't really see how the system is effective, or how much how much it added to the existing contact tracing system. The effectiveness was still assumed, and the problem was just because the manual process was too difficult to use. Okay, but they also offer some more accountability along with this newly provided easier access, include keeping the access record for 28 days, and people can access their data if they go to a website, I think from September on, to see if the record has been accessed. But you have to remember to do that. Otherwise, after 28 days, it's gone. And unless you are identified as a contact, even if your records are even your records are accessed, unless you actively look it up, like the earlier I said, you won't be told that your data is being accessed unless you're identified as a contact. Um, and the government doesn't really provide protocol about like how wide the window they request the data, or kind of like how they determine if you are close content or not. It doesn't have very clear protocol on how each local government is doing it. Um, I and my assistant did a study for several months on our own resources to try to find available data on this question of effectiveness, which is very limited and incomplete. And we're just unable to conclude that the SMS guest data request is an effective way for contact tracing. And there has not been official efforts to evaluate the effectiveness of the system. Okay, so we often say that we have all these tech measures to stop or just pandemic, or to lessen the harm caused by the pandemic. We want to save life, so we need to have some trade-off between privacy protection and the increase for public benefit. Whether and how to adjust the calculation data based on new developments like what Frank has talked about, the vaccination, when it's more available, maybe the calculation should be different. What about the new variants? Omicron variants is really not as serious as Delta. So, like, how do we adjust them, and when should we adjust them? And how effective is the SMS guest list as a contact tracing measure? This question that I was discussing earlier, and personally spent months looking at it. It's really hard to answer. The part of reason that it's very hard to answer is because there are so many other measures already. There's strict border control, there is strict quarantine mandate, there's mask, and there's a lot of existing contact tracing measures. So what does this one contact tracing measure that collects so much data on a daily basis, asking everyone to do this every day, do? How much does it do? How much does it add to what we already had? And how do we evaluate that? What kind of data should be made available? So I said that I spent months with my assistant trying to find the data. This data are not made open, and they are not very clearly separate from other data, other reporting data. So we kind of have to clean the noise, and it's just kind of impossible. And how broad should this guest list mandate be? Like sometimes they don't, they it's should they impose this mandate based on the risk level of the location? So, for example, a lot of times people were asked to go into a big department store and check in at the entrance, and the whole department store can have 70,000 visitors a day. And so, does the government request the whole 70,000, or should they just ask for data that's from individual stores in the department store? And from what we read from the news, it seems that they do ask for the whole 70,000 records entering the department store one day. And is that proportionate or necessary? So Taiwan's claimed that from the beginning of the pandemic that its big data strategy in COVID-19 prevention is proportionate and necessary. Actually, I would have to say is largely unacceptable. So here I just provide you these two sets of examples on smart city and public health emergency. And I look forward to have discussions with you. Thank you.